Hello, everyone. We are here for our first read aloud. For our first read aloud.
National Geographic Kids
For our next read aloud for Frederick Douglass. We're going to be doing our next big biography lesson. Frederick Douglass. This book was another National Geographic reader. It's by Barbara Kramer again. She is a fantastic biography writer. But Frederick Douglass was an amazing person, accomplished many, many different things. Above all, you're going to see his work to end slavery. So a very, very important person to know about history. But before we get into this book and our skill today, because you're going to get to learn all about him, we're going to look at our goals. Remember, for reading, we always have two goals. And I should say for this biography reading, we have two goals. We have a reading goal, we have a social studies goal. Let's read our reading goal together at I can determine. Ready? I can determine or figure out the main idea of a text and key details for support. You're going to see the graphic organizer that we're using. It's not like a summary, so we're not just going to be writing down main ideas. We are going to be looking more for just jotting down key details. But those key details are going to be the most important ones that almost maybe be more like main ideas, and kind of like main ideas about different parts of Frederick Douglass's life. And you'll kind of see how it works again. Let's read our goal at I can explain. Ready? I can explain how specific, certain people, so Frederick Douglass, have done important actions or things to help change the world around them in history. So we're just looking at past events. Make sure I don't lose the book here. All right. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go to Schoology here. So we're going to be working on Biography Lesson 8 today, learning more about important historical people. And that's what we've gotten to do. We've gotten to learn about many, many different important historical people throughout this unit so far. So remember, my screen looks different than yours because I have everything sitting here ready, waiting to send to you. So, so that's why mine always looks different. But I'm going to click on this top one. Biography Lesson 8, learning more about important historical people. Now remember, this also looks different because you have a step 1. Your step 1 was to open this video and watch it. But I'm making the video, so it can't be there yet. So we're going to go to step 2 then. Step 2, open this biography note taker and notability. So open that up. In the top right corner, you'll see the action button, the rectangle with an arrow. We're going to hit that button. Copy to notability. Going to hit the blue button, create new note. In the top right corner, going to hit import. Cool. First thing, always, write your name. Helps me so much later when I'm looking through everyone's details and notes. Okay, so biography note taker is the title of this, and we're going to read it at we're going to read our goal up here too, that I can identify significant key events. So let's read it. I can identify significant key events about my person's life. So remember, the word identify means figure out. So I can figure out significant key events. Really what that is most important. I'm not liking my writing there today. I'll write it better for you. So we'll be figuring out the most important. Here we go. The most important parts. So that's what we're really going to be looking at. We're going to try to figure out what the most important parts are of our person's life. And this graphic organizer is going to help us do that. So it's 3 columns. The left column starts with time periods. And we're going to be breaking it down into different periods or parts of his life. His early life, his youth. And so early life is like when he is young. I'll make these notes on here like I have with the last ones. Youth and adulthood. So really when he was a kid, basically to when he becomes an adult. So just as he's kind of getting older, through high school, through college, through those kind of high school age years. We've talked about doesn't mean everyone does go to college, but the way for you to like better understand what that is. So like youth is like you've been in third grade right now, going to adulthood. Like if it was you going into like high school and then into college? That's what we're gonna be looking at for that section. Big challenge. Those are like the problems or the struggles. Achievements. I mean, those are just like the really good things, or like the best things. The last section is wrap up. Doing now or did the person die? But what's their big contribution impact? I would like to just think of this question. How did he change the world? Because that's a big thing we're always looking at. Especially with our social studies goal. I probably lost the book. Yeah, I signed out too long. With social studies goal, we were really looking at how did they change the world around them in history. So we'll get to take a look at that for Frederick Douglass. And in the middle section, what am I learning about this person? Well, that's where you're going to be writing down all of your notes through that middle section. And then the last one, what am I learning about history during this time? Like about this time in history. So this is something that happened in the past. So what are we going to get to learn about during that time in the past? Because it's different from now. So everybody, we'll just get signed in really quick. You've got to watch me do this so many times. I was just getting so into our graphic organizer and getting excited about it. Okay, and this is one of the read to me books from Epic, so that's why it is plain. But also kind of cool. If you're like really into this, you can go back and read this book later by yourself, or you can always have it read to you, or you can watch this video and listen to me read it again. I'm going to read through just about everything of the book. I'll be skipping over some parts, just to kind of bounce us around a little bit to find the parts that we're going to need. But I'm definitely going to read, thinking about our graphic organizer. I'm going to read this first part about his young, early life and his youth and adulthood. Then I'll stop the video, give you a chance to think about key details there, and then we can add those details. Here we go. Who was Frederick Douglass? Frederick Douglass was born a slave. He worked hard for his master for no money. His master told Douglass where to live, what to eat, and what to do. After 20 years as a slave, Douglass escaped. He began speaking out against slavery. He didn't stop until all slaves were free. Then he worked to help freed slaves have better lives. A couple words to know there. Master, the person who owned slaves. Slavery, the practice of owning slaves. And this was a painting of Frederick Douglass from around 1844. So you can see he slaved for 20 years. I could never imagine it. But then after he escaped, he didn't just go into hiding or try to get away. He thought, you know what, I'm gone. I got to help everybody else too who are still slaves. So really pretty cool. That just gives you an idea of what this book is going to be about and his accomplishments and his impact on world history. Born a slave. Douglass was born in February 1818 on a farm in Talbot County, Maryland, USA. Soon after his birth, his mother was sent to work on another farm. Douglass only saw her 4 or 5 times. She died when he was 7. He never even knew his father. This is a wood engraving of slaves working with cotton in the American South. That was was one of the main jobs if you were a slave, you were doing processing cotton and basically making cotton from plants and then turning it into more of like the cloth that you could use. Douglass spent his early years with his grandparents. They lived in a cabin about 12 miles from his master's farm. That's a fact. Douglass's grandfather was a free man, but his grandmother was a slave. She took care of slaves who were too young to work. As an adult, Douglass had his cabin built in his backyard in Washington, D.C. It looked like the one where he had lived with his grandparents. So it's kind of cool. So it's a place where he was living, his backyard. He had that built, probably for just some memories. When Douglas was about 6 years old, his grandmother took him to their master's farm. She didn't want to leave him there, but she had to do what their owner said. Douglas knew then that he was expected to obey the master too. About 2 years later, Douglas was sent to Baltimore, Maryland to work. He'd heard stories about that city and was excited to go. In his own words, "I didn't know I was a slave until I found out I couldn't do the things I wanted." And this is a painting of the Baltimore harbor in 1831, during the time that Douglas lived there. In his time, so these are a few things just about slavery. If you were very, very interested in this book, please come back and take a look at this. Basically just going through the different things that slaves couldn't do, which is basically everything. The only thing they could do are the things that their master said they could do. Learning to read. In Baltimore, Douglas worked for Hugh Auld and his wife. He took care of their young son and ran errands. Mrs. Auld started teaching Douglas to read. Mr. Auld told her to stop. He said slaves should only know one thing, how to obey their master. But Douglas kept learning. He gave biscuits to poor white children he met on his errands. In return, they helped him read. That's a fact. With 50 cents Douglas earned from polishing shoes, he bought a book of famous speeches and read it many times. This wood engraving shows Mrs. Auld teaching Douglas to read. When Douglas was 15, he was sent back to the farm. His master had died. He now had a new owner. Douglas had to work hard in the field. He was often treated badly. He tried to escape, but he was caught. Other slave owners were angry. Douglas had set a bad example for their slaves. To avoid trouble, Douglas's new master sent Douglas back to Baltimore to work for the Auld family again. Slaves often worked long hours in the fields. They worked on a large farm or group of farms called a plantation. That's a fact. When Douglas was working as a field slave, he held secret classes to teach other slaves to read. Runaway slave. In Baltimore, Douglas met free black people. He fell in love with a free black woman named Anna Murray. More than ever, he wanted to be free. And on September 3rd, 1838, he tried to escape again. He headed north by boat and train. If he were caught, he might be killed or sold. But he made it to New York, a free state. He sent for Anna, and they got married. Words to know. Free state. A U.S. state that did not allow people to own slaves. That's a fact. Over time, Douglas and Anna had 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. And this is an illustration of Douglas and his wife, Anna, soon after they were married. So I'm going to go back to our note taker here. So we're going to be thinking about his very young life, and then kind of his life from being a kid to an adult. And we'll stop the video there. Think about your ideas before you play the next video.